The Stone Age did not begin with a sudden roar or thunderclap. It began quietly, in the rhythm of footsteps pressed into mud, in the sharp crack of stone on stone, in the restless gaze of a creature that was not quite ape, not quite modern human. The dawn of thought arrived like the first light of morning, faint and hesitant, yet carrying the promise of everything to come. Somewhere on the wide savannas of Africa, about 2.5 million years ago, early hominins wandered among tall grasses and scattered trees. They had no homes, no words, no maps to guide them. Life was a struggle of hunger and danger. Lions waited in the shadows, crocodiles lurked in rivers, and the air often carried the scent of death. Yet in the midst of this harshness, something extraordinary flickered in the minds of these beings, a spark of curiosity. One of them bent down near a riverbank, picking up a piece of stone shaped by chance into a rough edge. Perhaps it was hunger that drove him. An animal carcass lay nearby, its meat trapped behind tough skin. He struck one stone against another. The sound was sharp, strange, like the cry of a bird. A fragment chipped away. Again he struck, again the stone fractured, until in his hands he held a tool sharper than any claw. That moment, simple as it seemed, marked the birth of human technology. The tool was not just stone. It was possibility. With it, flesh yielded, bone split, and marrow, the richest food of all, was unlocked. The Oldowan tools, as archaeologists now call them, were crude yet revolutionary. They carried within them the first whispers of human dominance. A world of claws and teeth had begun to shift into a world of hands and thought. Day by day, generation after generation, this quiet revolution spread. Hominins carried their tools as they walked across plains, into forests, toward rivers. They learned to strike stone with greater precision, shaping axes, scrapers, and blades. The rhythm of stone-breaking became a rhythm of survival. For the first time, the environment did not only shape humanity, humanity began shaping the environment. But the dawn of thought was not just about survival. Imagine a child watching her mother nap flint, eyes wide, trying to understand. She picks up a smaller rock, tries to copy, and laughs when she makes a spark. In that moment lies something beyond instinct: teaching, imitation, memory. These were the roots of culture. Knowledge was no longer just born in the mind, it could be shared. The land itself seemed to change in response. Bones of animals, broken and scattered, told stories of successful hunts. Fire-blackened rocks hinted at experiments with flame long before fire was truly mastered. Footprints preserved in soft ground revealed not just one set of steps but many, moving together, side by side. Early humans were not solitary wanderers anymore. They were becoming a people. The dawn also carried fear. Every discovery was shadowed by risk. A sharper tool meant greater danger of injury. A larger hunt meant attracting predators. A new path could lead to water, or to death. Yet fear itself became part of learning. To step into danger and return alive was to carry back knowledge. Each risk taken was a lesson carved into memory, passed down without words. Sometimes, as night fell and the air grew cold, these early people would huddle together for warmth. They had no language to tell stories, no words to share dreams, yet their gestures and cries were enough. They learned from the gaze of one another, from the way hands pointed, from the rhythm of group movement. Slowly, a bond deeper than survival began to grow. They were no longer just individuals, they were a community. And in the silence of the night sky, under countless stars, perhaps one of them lifted his eyes upward, wondering. The heavens were beyond his grasp, yet the very act of looking meant something new had awakened. Curiosity stretched beyond hunger, beyond fear. The world was no longer only a battlefield of survival, it was a place of mystery. Thus the Stone Age dawned, not in sudden brilliance, but in the slow, patient rhythm of survival and imagination. The first chipped stone was more than a tool, it was a key. It unlocked a door that no other creature had opened. Through it, the path of humanity began to unfold. The journey ahead would carry them across continents, through ice and fire, toward inventions undreamed of. But here, in this fragile beginning, we see the essence of what made us human. Hands that shaped, minds that wondered, and hearts that stayed together through the dark. The dawn of thought was not an age of comfort, but it was the age of becoming. Humanity's story had begun. If the chipped stone was the first great gift of the Stone Age, then fire was its second, more powerful, more mysterious, and far more dangerous. Where stone gave hands their strength, fire gave humans the strength to command the night itself. No one knows exactly when our ancestors first learned to master flame. At first, it must have been a thing of terror. Lightning struck a dry tree, and flames leapt upward, hissing and snapping. For most creatures, fire meant only fear. But early humans lingered. They crept close to the warmth, feeling the heat on their skin, eyes reflecting the dancing light. Hunger and fear warred within them. Could this thing destroy them, or could it save them? One night, perhaps a bold one carried a burning branch back to camp. The flame sputtered, threatening to die, but with dry grass and careful blowing, it lived. That night was unlike any before it. The darkness no longer pressed so heavily. The growls of predators stayed distant. The warmth reached into their bones. Around the fire, the cold winds of the African plains softened, and with them, so too did fear. Humanity had captured a piece of the sun. Fire changed everything. Raw meat became roasted, safer, tastier, easier to chew. Flames hardened wooden spears, giving hunters sharper weapons. Ashes and smoke warded off insects. Most importantly, fire gave time. Where darkness once ended the day, firelight extended it. Families gathered close, and the long night hours became moments of connection. At first, they shared silence. But silence was never truly empty. There were gestures, laughter, mimicry, the rhythm of hands drumming against thighs. Soon, there were sounds, cries that hinted at meaning, fragments of proto-language. Around the fire, these sounds grew into shared memory. A hunt was replayed with grunts and sweeping arms. A child's daring climb into a tree became a performance, met with laughter and pride. Without knowing it, they were building the foundations of story. Fire also gave the first true shelters. Before flame, humans relied only on caves and overhangs. But fire allowed them to stay in the open, protected even on the plains. Slowly, they began to shape their environments more deliberately. Branches leaned together to make huts. In colder regions, bones of mammoths became walls, covered with hides. These shelters were fragile, temporary, but they were chosen, not simply found. Humanity was no longer a guest of the earth. It was becoming its architect. Imagine one such camp, a circle of small huts around a fire, sparks drifting into the night. Children chase each other, playing with sticks, their laughter mingling with the crackle of flame. A mother sharpens a flint scraper, eyes flicking between the tool and her child. An elder, too weak to hunt, sits close to the fire, humming a tune with no words. This was the heartbeat of early society: warmth, safety, togetherness. But with fire and shelter came new challenges. Wood had to be gathered, sparks had to be coaxed, flames had to be guarded against wind and rain. To lose fire meant to lose safety. So, communities grew more disciplined. A child might be told never to stray too far, lest he fail to bring wood before nightfall. A hunter might be chosen to guard the fire while others searched for food. Responsibilities deepened bonds. What was once instinct became cooperation, and cooperation became culture. At night, when hunger was eased and fear pushed back by flame, minds wandered further. The play of shadows on cave walls stirred imagination. The crackle of wood became a rhythm, a heartbeat. Some took burnt sticks and traced marks onto stone, simple lines, perhaps the first whispers of art. Others made figures of clay or bone, small charms held close, symbols of mystery and protection. Here, too, death took on new meaning. In earlier ages, the dead may have been left where they fell, but now, with fire and shelter binding them closer, people began to mourn. Graves were dug. Bodies were buried with tools, beads, or ochre. Was it love? Was it fear of spirits? Was it the first steps toward belief? Whatever the reason, it revealed that humans were no longer living only for the moment. They were remembering, honoring, hoping. Around the fire, stories grew. Not just stories of hunts and dangers, but of things unseen, of animals that spoke, of spirits in the trees, of dreams that lingered after waking. Storytelling was more than entertainment. It was teaching, passing wisdom from old to young. "Do not cross that river," a tale might warn, "for the crocodile waits." Or, "Hunt together and the beast will fall." Wrapped in rhythm and imagination, memory became stronger than instinct. Thus, fire gave humanity more than warmth. It gave time to reflect, space to imagine, reason to stay together. It turned darkness into possibility, silence into song, strangers into families. The Stone Age was no longer only about survival. It was becoming an age of meaning. The journey had only begun, but already the human spirit was rising, lit by the flickering flames of its first hearths. For countless generations, humanity lived as wanderers, hunters of beasts, gatherers of roots and berries, children of the land who left few footprints behind. They followed herds across plains, traced rivers through forests, and carried their lives on their backs. Yet slowly, quietly, the world began to change, and with it, so did humanity. The Ice Age ended. Glaciers shrank back into the mountains, and great grasslands gave way to forests and fertile valleys. Rivers swelled with seasonal floods, leaving behind rich soil. Where once survival meant chasing the movement of animals, now the land itself invited humans to stay. It began with seeds. Perhaps a woman, gathering wild grain, noticed that when seeds spilled into the soil, new stalks grew in the same place. Perhaps a child buried a nut and returned months later to find a sprout. These simple observations became the foundation of one of the greatest revolutions in history: agriculture. At first, it was not deliberate. Hunters and gatherers still roamed, but they began to revisit places where food grew more plentiful. They lingered longer by rivers where wild wheat swayed or where beans thrived. Over time, they learned to scatter seeds themselves, to protect young shoots from grazing animals, to harvest with sharper tools. This shift was subtle, but it changed everything. For the first time, humans were shaping not just tools or fire but the very rhythm of life itself. The earth became not only a home but a partner. Farming demanded patience. A seed planted in spring would not feed a child until autumn. But patience brought reward. Granaries filled, bellies grew stronger, and families no longer starved in winter. Food could be stored, shared, traded. And with this stability came growth. Settlements rose. At first, they were clusters of huts, temporary shelters near fertile land. But soon, they grew into true villages. Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, with its towering carved stones, became a place of gathering and worship long before the wheel or writing existed. Çatalhöyük, a vast Neolithic town, housed thousands of people in a maze of connected homes. Roofs served as streets, and inside the walls, paintings and statues revealed lives rich with imagination and belief. These settlements brought both beauty and burden. In a world of wandering, disputes could be solved by moving apart. In a world of farming, people were bound to the same soil. Cooperation was essential. Fields needed tending, irrigation channels needed digging, harvests needed storing. But tension simmered too. Whose land was richest? Who would lead the planting? When rains failed, who was to blame? For the first time, humanity faced not only nature's dangers but the complexities of society. Yet alongside conflict bloomed creativity. Pottery emerged, clay shaped by hand, hardened by fire, decorated with patterns. Pots stored grain, carried water, and bore the fingerprints of their makers across millennia. Weaving too appeared, threads spun into cloth that softened lives and gave new forms of expression. And there was art, always art. Cave walls gave way to plastered homes painted with hunters, dancers, and animals. Figurines of women with broad hips and mothers with infants spoke of fertility, of life, of reverence for the power of creation. Music drifted through the air, flutes carved from bone, drums stretched with hide. Humanity was no longer only surviving, it was celebrating. Agriculture also brought animals closer. Wolves, once feared, lingered near camps to scavenge scraps. Those that stayed, those that learned not to bite, became companions. Dogs guarded, hunted, and shared warmth by the fire. Goats and sheep were tamed, their milk and wool becoming resources as vital as their meat. The bond between human and animal deepened, not as predator and prey but as partners. Yet this new life was fragile. Crops could fail. Floods could wash away months of work. Droughts could turn soil to dust. Unlike the hunter, who could follow herds to new lands, the farmer was rooted, vulnerable. Famine could sweep through a village like fire through dry grass. Disease, too, spread faster in close quarters. For every gift agriculture gave, it demanded caution, resilience, and innovation. But the seeds of civilization had been planted, and they would not wither. Humanity had tasted permanence. The rhythm of the seasons became the rhythm of life itself. Sowing, growing, harvesting, storing. Children grew up knowing not only the chase of the hunt, but the patience of waiting for the earth's bounty. Elders shared wisdom of rains and soil, passing on traditions as vital as fire had once been. Imagine standing in one of these villages. The air smells of smoke and tilled earth. Chickens cluck near woven baskets. A woman kneels in the dust, planting seeds with careful hands. Children carry jars of water from the river, their laughter mingling with the bleating of goats. At the village's edge, men raise stones into place, perhaps not knowing that their work will stand for thousands of years, monuments to the dawn of permanence. This was no longer the life of wanderers. Humanity had crossed a threshold. The forager's world of constant movement was giving way to the farmer's world of stability and memory. From these first villages, from these first seeds sown in the soil, rose everything that followed: cities, nations, empires, stories carved in stone. The Stone Age was transforming into something greater, something that carried both promise and peril. The Age of Settlement had begun. By the end of the Stone Age, humanity had walked an astonishing path, from frightened wanderers with chipped stones in hand to builders of villages, farmers of fields, and dreamers of myths. Yet one last chapter of this age would leave a legacy carved so deeply into the earth that it still stands today: the monuments of stone, raised not just for survival but for memory. It began with death. Long before humans raised temples or fortresses, they built graves. In simple pits, bodies were placed with beads, shells, or ochre, as if preparing them for a journey beyond. Over time, burials grew more elaborate. Stones were arranged into circles or chambers, bones carefully aligned, offerings left behind. These were not only acts of mourning but of belief. The dead were no longer abandoned to the soil. They were remembered, honored, and given a place among the living. From these beginnings rose the great megaliths. Across Europe, Asia, and Africa, people dragged colossal stones, sometimes weighing tens of tons, across miles of land. With ropes, logs, and sheer determination, they raised them into towering shapes: dolmens, passage tombs, stone circles. These were not homes or shelters. They were symbols, places of ritual, places where the human spirit stretched toward eternity. Stonehenge in England, Karnak in France, Newgrange in Ireland, Nabta Playa in Egypt. These sites became calendars of stone, aligned with the sun and stars. On solstices, light pierced their chambers in perfect lines, marking the cycles of seasons. To farming communities, such knowledge was survival, but it was also more. These monuments were statements. We are here, we endure, and we belong to something greater than ourselves. Imagine the scene. Hundreds gather on a plain, pulling ropes together, sweat shining on their skin. A stone rises slowly, groaning against gravity, until at last it stands upright. A cheer rises, drums beat, voices chant. At night, firelight flickers across the stones, shadows stretching into the dark. In that moment, the community is not only a group of farmers and herders, they are a people united by memory and vision. But the monuments were not just for the living. They were bridges between worlds, the realm of the earth and the realm of the unseen. Shamans, priests, or elders stood among the stones, whispering to spirits, watching the heavens, telling stories of gods and ancestors. Belief, once a faint flicker in burial rituals, now roared into flame. Religion was born in stone. Meanwhile, tools grew sharper, stronger, more refined. Polished axes gleamed like mirrors, obsidian blades cut with a precision rivaling modern steel. Pottery became more decorated, weaving more intricate. Trade networks spread, carrying shells, flint, and obsidian across great distances. Human culture was no longer scattered sparks, it was a spreading fire. Yet even as the Stone Age reached its height, a new sound began to echo: the clang of metal. In some lands, people discovered that certain rocks, when heated, melted into something entirely new. Copper first, then bronze, harder, sharper, more durable than stone. With metal, plows cut deeper, weapons struck harder, and ornaments gleamed brighter. The Stone Age was ending, but not fading quietly. It was transforming into the Bronze Age. Still, the stones remained. Even when metal tools replaced flint, even when villages grew into towns, the monuments endured, silent witnesses to the age that birthed them. They reminded people of their roots, of the ancestors who had dragged them into place, of the mysteries carved into their alignments. The Stone Age ended, but it did not vanish. Its legacy lay in every field planted, every fire lit, every story told. It was in the bones buried with beads, in the dogs curled at human feet, in the circles of stone where sun and shadow still dance. It was the foundation of civilization itself. Picture the closing scene of this age, a sunrise breaking over a stone circle, light flooding through a passageway built by hands long gone. The people gathered there, raised their eyes to the sky, watching the sun as their ancestors had done for centuries. Behind them lie fields of wheat, villages of clay and timber, herds of sheep and goats. Ahead of them lies the unknown, a future of bronze and iron, of cities and empires. But for this moment, in the glow of the rising sun, they stand rooted in the achievements of the Stone Age. They had taken stone, fire, seed, and memory, and with them they had shaped the world. The Stone Age was more than an era of tools. It was the age when humanity became human, when survival grew into meaning, when memory became monument, and when the first chapters of civilization were written not in ink but in stone. And though thousands of years have passed, the stones still stand, whispering the story of who we were, and reminding us of how far we have come.